My mother stole my boyfriend, marrying him to my sister while I was at MIT. Fate decreed I'd rise far beyond their combined treachery. I was at MIT, dreaming of a future filled with love and groundbreaking tech, when my own mother orchestrated the ultimate betrayal. She stole my boyfriend and convinced him to marry my sister. The sting of that heartbreak was immense, but years later, when they showed up at my reconciliation party and met my husband, the look on their faces was absolutely priceless. Sometimes, life's most brutal betrayals carve the path to your greatest triumphs. Before I dive into this wild journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story of turning family betrayal into triumph resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Growing up in suburban Boston, our family looked absolutely picture-perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style home, with its white picket fence and manicured lawn, hid a deep, festering dysfunction. My mother, Margaret, ruled our household with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove. She was the kind of woman who'd smile sweetly at neighbors, then dissect their every flaw the moment they left. My father, Richard, was her complete opposite, quiet, passive, perpetually nodding along, just trying to keep the peace. Then there was my sister, Vanessa, 3 years older than me. She was everything my mother ever wanted in a daughter. Blonde, beautiful, and effortlessly charming. Vanessa was the cheerleader, the homecoming queen, the girl every boy wanted to date. I, on the other hand, was the family's designated black sheep. While Vanessa spent hours perfecting her makeup and social status, I buried myself in books and computer code. My bedroom walls were plastered with academic awards, not boy band posters. By age 14, I'd taught myself 3 programming languages and built my first rudimentary website. None of this impressed my mother. "Computers are for boys, Clara," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "You'll never find a husband if you keep hiding behind those screens." Every single achievement of mine was met with the same patronizing response. "That's nice, dear. But did you hear about Vanessa's new modeling opportunity?" My sister's temporary jobs and failed ventures were celebrated, while my consistent academic excellence was treated as an afterthought. My father would occasionally sneak into my room after these exchanges, awkwardly patting my shoulder. "Your mother means well," he'd mumble. "She just worries about you." But his eyes told a different story. He knew the favoritism was wrong, but he just lacked the courage to confront it. The summer before my senior year, I won a national coding competition that came with a full college scholarship. When I excitedly shared the news at dinner, my mother's response was a swift kick to the gut. "Well, I suppose that's one way to get to college, since you won't be getting any athletic scholarships like Vanessa did." My father just stared at his plate, and Vanessa just smirked. That night, a fire ignited within me. I made a solemn promise to myself. This scholarship was my ticket out. I applied only to colleges at least 3 states away, and I celebrated privately, fiercely, when my acceptance letter from MIT arrived. My mother's only comment? Concern about me moving so far from family. The irony was not lost on me. College became my absolute salvation. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who truly valued my intelligence and passion for technology. I met my best friend, Lauren, during orientation week when we both reached for the same computer science textbook. "You can have it," she quipped. "I'll just copy your notes when you inevitably understand everything better than me anyway." Her honesty and humor were like a fresh breeze. Through Lauren, I started building the confidence my family had systematically dismantled. She couldn't understand why I dreaded going home for breaks. "Your family sounds like a bad reality TV show," she'd say after hearing my stories. "You know that's not normal, right?" I did know intellectually, but emotionally I still craved their approval. Each break, I returned home, hoping things would be different. They never were. If anything, the stark contrast between my college life and my home life made the dysfunction even more apparent. By junior year, I'd limited my visits to major holidays. Each time I returned, I felt increasingly alien in my own childhood home. My growing independence seemed to irritate my mother, who doubled down on her criticism. "MIT is making you cold," she accused, when I declined to play along with one of Vanessa's dramatic stories about a boyfriend who dumped her. "You used to be such a sweet girl." The truth was, I was finally finding my voice. For the first time, I started pushing back against my mother's comments, politely but firmly. My father watched these exchanges with a mixture of concern and what I now recognize as a flicker of pride. During winter break of my senior year, my mother suggested I dress more like Vanessa for a neighborhood party. I calmly replied, "I'm comfortable with how I look, Mom." The shocked expression on her face was worth the silent treatment that followed. Little did I know this newfound strength would be tested in ways I couldn't possibly imagine when I brought home the first man I truly loved. I met Ethan Carter during a tech conference in my senior year. He was presenting a startup's new app that connected small local businesses with consumers. His presentation was confident, not arrogant, technical but accessible. When he fielded questions, he seemed genuinely interested in feedback rather than just defending his ideas. I was impressed. After his talk, I worked up the courage to approach him with some suggestions about his user interface. Instead of dismissing me, he pulled out a notebook and asked me to explain further. We ended up talking for over an hour, eventually moving to a coffee shop when the conference staff needed to close the room. He had warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and a habit of running his hand through his dark hair when he was thinking deeply about something. "Your perspective is exactly what this project needs," he said as we finished our third cup of coffee. "Would you be interested in meeting again to discuss this further?" That meeting turned into weekly coffee dates, which evolved into coding sessions at the campus library, which eventually blossomed into actual dates. Ethan was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He was brilliant but humble, ambitious but ethical. He listened when I spoke, truly listened, and valued my opinions. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Our relationship deepened over the next few months. We'd spend hours talking about everything from algorithmic efficiency to our favorite childhood cartoons. He shared his dreams of building technology that would genuinely improve people's lives, not just make money. I found myself opening up about my family dynamics, something I rarely discussed with anyone besides Lauren. "They sound challenging," he said carefully, after I described a particularly painful Christmas where my mother had compared my academic scholarship to Vanessa's beauty pageant win, declaring only one of those would last beyond youth. Ethan continued, "Your intelligence and passion are incredible gifts, Clara. Anyone who can't see that isn't seeing you clearly." By spring break, we were serious enough that I invited him to come home with me to meet my family. Part of me wanted to show off this amazing man who valued exactly what my family dismissed about me. Another part, a desperate, hopeful part, wished that seeing me with someone like Ethan might finally make my mother recognize my worth. The visit started promising this further. That meeting turned into weekly coffee dates, which evolved into coding sessions at the campus library, which eventually blossomed into actual dates. Ethan was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He was brilliant but humble, ambitious but ethical. He listened when I spoke, truly listened, and valued my opinions. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Our relationship deepened over the next few months. We'd spend hours talking about everything from algorithmic efficiency to our favorite childhood cartoons. He shared his dreams of building technology that would genuinely improve people's lives, not just make money. I found myself opening up about my family dynamics, something I rarely discussed with anyone besides Lauren. "They sound challenging," he said carefully, after I described a particularly painful Christmas where my mother had compared my academic scholarship to Vanessa's beauty pageant win, declaring only one of those would last beyond youth. Ethan continued, "Your intelligence and passion are incredible gifts, Clara. Anyone who can't see that isn't seeing you clearly." By spring break, we were serious enough that I invited him to come home with me to meet my family. Part of me wanted to show off this amazing man who valued exactly what my family dismissed about me. Another part, a desperate, hopeful part, wished that seeing me with someone like Ethan might finally make my mother recognize my worth. The visit started promising. 3 weeks later, during spring break, I decided to surprise Ethan by driving to his apartment instead of going home. I hadn't told my family I was coming either. The thought of another tense dinner with Vanessa's increasingly obvious flirtation toward Ethan was more than I could handle that week. When I arrived at Ethan's building, his car wasn't in its usual spot. On a hunch, I drove to his office. His car wasn't there either, but his business partner, Ryan, was just leaving. "Ethan." Ryan looked confused when I asked. He took a few days off, said he was visiting family. Ethan's family lived in California. Mine lived in Massachusetts. We were in Cambridge. I drove home in a daze, not entirely sure what I was thinking or planning. 6 hours later, I pulled into my parents' driveway at 11 p.m. My father's car was there. So was my mother's. And parked behind them was Ethan's distinctive blue Subaru, with that small dent in the passenger door from when we'd gone hiking, and a rock had hit it during a minor landslide. The house was dark except for the living room. I used my key to enter quietly, hearing low voices from that direction. I moved toward the sound, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they would hear it. I stopped at the living room entrance, partially hidden by the hallway wall. Ethan sat on our couch, my sister beside him, closer than friends would sit. My mother was in her favorite armchair across from them, leaning forward animatedly as she spoke. "You two make so much sense together," she was saying. "Clara is so absorbed in her computer world. She'll never fully appreciate what you're building, Ethan. You need someone who understands the social aspects of business, the connections, the networking. Vanessa has those skills in abundance." "Clara has been really distant lately," Ethan replied, though he shifted uncomfortably. "Always working on her project." "That's how she is," Vanessa chimed in, placing her hand on his knee. "Always choosing computers over people. Remember when she skipped my college graduation to attend that tech conference?" I hadn't. I'd skipped it because Vanessa specifically told me not to come after I'd refused to write her final term paper for her. "I just don't know anymore," Ethan continued. "Things were so clear a few months ago. But now you need to think about your future," my mother pressed. "Vanessa can be the perfect partner for a man with your ambitions, the supportive wife who makes the right connections, hosts the right dinner parties. Can you honestly see Clara doing that? She'd probably wear jeans to a business function and talk about coding all night." I must have made a sound, because suddenly all three heads snapped in my direction. The look on Ethan's face, shock mingled with undeniable guilt, told me everything I needed to know. "Clara," my mother recovered first. "What a surprise. We thought you were staying at school this week." I ignored her, my gaze locked on Ethan. "How long has this been going on?" He stood up, moving away from Vanessa. "It's not what it looks like, really. Because it looks like you've been coming to my family home behind my back." I cut in, my voice shaking. "It looks like you're sitting here with my mother and sister discussing our relationship and your doubts about me. What part am I misinterpreting?" "Sweetheart," my mother interjected. "We're just having conversation. Ethan has been kind enough to visit your father and me occasionally. Is that so wrong? And me ending up here during those visits is pure coincidence," Vanessa added with a smirk, one that disappeared when my mother shot her a warning look. "When did these visits start?" I asked Ethan directly. He couldn't meet my eyes. "A couple months ago, your mom called me, said your dad was having health issues and wanted some company while your mom ran errands." I turned to Ethan. "Do you agree with her assessment? That I'm too focused on my career to be a good partner to you?" He hesitated, and in that agonizing hesitation I had my answer. "Clara," he finally said, his voice weak, "you have to admit, things have changed. You're always working on your project for graduation. It's temporary, and you've been equally busy with your startup." I interrupted. I never once doubted your commitment because of it. It's not just that, he continued weakly. Your family has helped me see that maybe we want different futures. My family. I repeated flatly. You mean my mother and the sister who's apparently been pursuing you behind my back? No one's been pursuing anyone. Vanessa protested, though her hand still rested possessively on the couch, where Ethan had been sitting. I laughed, a hollow, broken sound that startled even me. Mom, why? Why would you do this? For a moment, my mother's mask slipped completely, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. Let's be practical, Clara. Vanessa needs a successful husband more than you do. You'll always be able to support yourself with your computer job. Vanessa needs security, social standing. The brutal honesty stunned me into silence. Besides, she continued, apparently believing this logic would convince me, you are never going to be the right wife for someone like Ethan. He needs someone who understands the social requirements of being married to a successful man, someone who can entertain, who knows the right people, someone who puts family first. I think what your mother means, Ethan interjected, apparently finding his voice, is that we might want different things in life. No, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I think my mother was perfectly clear. She decided my sister deserves you more than I do. So she orchestrated this whole scenario, and you went along with it. I turned to leave, then paused. Where's Dad in all this? My mother's expression tightened. Your father doesn't involve himself in these matters. Which, of course, meant he knew and did nothing. Again, I looked at Ethan one last time. We're done. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to explain. Whatever we had is over. As I walked out, I heard my mother saying, she'll calm down eventually. Clara has always been dramatic about these things. I got in my car. I drove. I cried until I couldn't see through my tears anymore. Pulling over at a highway rest stop, I called the only person I could trust. Lauren, I choked out, I need help. Everything's falling apart. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and definitely couldn't focus on completing my final semester. After spending 4 years working toward my degree, I made the painful decision to withdraw with just 2 months remaining. My academic advisor was shocked. This isn't like you, Clara, she said. Whatever is happening, we can work around it. Extensions, incomplete grades that you can finish during the summer. But the thought of remaining in Cambridge, where every coffee shop and library corner held memories of Ethan, was unbearable. More importantly, I couldn't bear the thought of graduation with no one in the audience, truly cheering for me. The facade had completely shattered. Lauren offered me her couch until I figured out my next steps. Her tiny apartment became my refuge as I cycled through grief, rage, and paralyzing self-doubt. Some days I couldn't get out of bed, replaying my mother's words in my head. Vanessa needs a successful husband more than you do. Had my entire family relationship been a competition I wasn't even aware I was participating in? Your mother is genuinely the most toxic person I've ever heard of, Lauren declared one evening as we split a pint of ice cream. And I once had a roommate who stole my identity and opened 3 credit cards. Despite her attempts at humor, I could see Lauren's growing concern. After I spent a week barely leaving the couch, she gently suggested therapy. Just a few sessions, she urged. My cousin went after her divorce and said it changed her life. Mostly to appease her, I agreed. The therapist, Dr. Linden, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that cut through my foggy mental state. What your family did was a profound betrayal, she told me in our first session. Your feelings are completely valid, but you have choices now about what role they play in your future. Over the next few months, those weekly sessions became anchors. Dr. Linden helped me see patterns in my family dynamics that went far beyond this final betrayal. More importantly, she helped me understand that I didn't have to continue participating in them. Your mother's behavior suggests deeply rooted insecurities that she's projecting onto both you and your sister, Dr. Linden explained. But her issues don't have to become your issues. By August, I had made a decision. I applied to complete my degree at the University of Washington in Seattle, as far from both Boston and California as I could reasonably get. With my MIT transcript and glowing recommendations from professors, I was accepted with a scholarship that would cover my final semester. Saying goodbye to Lauren was difficult. She had been my rock during the darkest period of my life. "You better video call me every week," she said fiercely as we hugged at the airport. "And I'm coming to your graduation with an embarrassingly large sign and air horns." Seattle felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. The city's blend of technology and natural beauty suited me perfectly. I found a tiny studio apartment near campus and decorated it with absolutely nothing that reminded me of my past life. No family photos, no mementos from MIT, no traces of Ethan. My phone remained largely silent. Ethan had tried calling and texting for the first few weeks after our confrontation. His messages evolving from defensive, "You didn't give me a chance to explain," to apologetic, "I made a terrible mistake," to pathetically nostalgic, "Remember when we watched the meteor shower on my roof?" I never responded, eventually blocking his number. My parents' communications followed a predictable pattern. My mother acted as if nothing had happened, sending chatty texts about neighborhood gossip and Vanessa's latest adventures. My father sent occasional brief messages, usually devoid of any real content. "Hope you're doing well." Neither acknowledged the betrayal directly. I responded minimally to my father and not at all to my mother. Through social media, which I rarely checked anymore, I learned that Ethan and Vanessa were officially dating. 2 months later, they were engaged. The announcement featured a photo of them with my beaming mother between them. My father stood slightly apart, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I deactivated all my accounts that day. With my social media gone and my old connections fading, I poured everything into rebuilding my life. I completed my degree with honors, attended by Lauren and her family, but no one from my own. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level position at a mid-sized tech company in downtown Seattle. The salary was modest, but the role offered valuable experience and, most importantly, a foot in the door of the Seattle tech scene. Slowly, I built a new friend circle. There was Kim from the rock climbing gym, who dragged me out for weekend hikes, insisting physical activity was essential for mental health. Aaron and David, a couple from my apartment building, adopted me into their friend group after discovering my pitiful, empty refrigerator when they brought over Ms. Delivered mail. And there was Lena from work, whose quiet competence and dry humor made our long coding sessions enjoyable rather than merely tolerable. These new friends knew nothing of my family drama. To them, I was simply Clara from the East Coast, who didn't talk much about home. They accepted this without question, filling our time together with present joys rather than past sorrows. 1 year after moving to Seattle, I received a text from my father that finally acknowledged reality. "Vanessa and Ethan's wedding this weekend. Your mother asks if you've changed your mind about attending." I hadn't been invited. I hadn't expected to be. I responded simply, "No." My father's reply came hours later. "I understand. I'm sorry, Clara." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd received from any of them, and while insufficient, it opened a thin channel of communication between us. We began exchanging occasional texts, nothing deep, usually just brief life updates. He never mentioned my mother or Vanessa, and I never asked. Through this minimal connection, I learned that Ethan's startup had failed 6 months after their wedding. He was now working for a competitor of the company he'd founded, a significant step down from CEO. Vanessa was between jobs again. They had moved into my parents' guest house temporarily while Ethan regrouped. This information should have brought satisfaction, perhaps even joy. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. Their struggles didn't undo my pain or restore what I'd lost. Success, I realized, would be the best revenge, not because it would hurt them, but because it would fulfill me. Around this time, I was assigned to a new project at work developing software for healthcare systems. The project lead was Omar Khan, a brilliant developer with 15 years of experience who had recently transferred from our San Francisco office. Under his mentorship, my skills expanded exponentially. "You have remarkable talent," he told me during a code review, "but you're playing it safe. Don't be afraid to propose solutions that break conventional approaches." His encouragement pushed me to develop innovative algorithms that significantly improved our system's efficiency. When the project was completed ahead of schedule and under budget, Omar made sure the entire department knew my contributions had been key to its success. That project led to my first promotion, then to larger responsibilities and leadership roles. By my third year in Seattle, I had established a reputation as someone who solved problems others couldn't. My career was flourishing in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days on Lauren's couch. Yet, despite professional success and a supportive friend circle, I kept potential romantic partners at arm's length. The betrayal had left scars that made trusting difficult. Several promising relationships ended when I couldn't bring myself to be fully vulnerable. The wall I'd built for protection had become a prison of sorts. Dr. Linden, with whom I still had occasional video sessions, gently pointed this out. "Walls keep out pain," she said, "but they also keep out joy. At some point, you'll need to decide if the protection is worth the isolation." I wasn't sure it wasn't, but life has a way of making decisions for us when we hesitate too long to make them ourselves. The Nexus project was my company's most ambitious undertaking to date. A comprehensive system designed to integrate patient data across healthcare providers while maintaining strict privacy protocols. The complexity required assembling an elite team drawn from multiple departments. As one of the lead developers, I attended the kickoff meeting with both excitement and trepidation. Our department head opened the session. "Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Daniel Zong, who's joining us from our Toronto office. Daniel will be the technical architect for Nexus, bringing his expertise in secure systems design and implementation." Daniel entered the conference room, and my first impression was of quiet competence. Around my age, maybe a year or two older, with thoughtful eyes behind simple glasses, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. When he spoke, explaining his vision for the project architecture, his passion for the work was evident in every carefully chosen word. During the breakout sessions that followed, Daniel and I were assigned to map the data flow framework. As we worked, I found myself repeatedly impressed by his approach to problem solving, methodical yet creative, with an eye for elegant solutions. "That's an interesting way to handle the authentication sequence," I commented as he sketched a diagram. "I wouldn't have considered decoupling those components." He smiled slightly. "Sometimes the best solutions come from questioning assumptions about what belongs together." Something in his tone suggested he might be talking about more than just code. Over the following weeks, Daniel and I developed a productive professional rhythm. We challenged each other's ideas respectfully, building on our different strengths to create something better than either of us could have designed alone. I found myself looking forward to our working sessions, extending them with questions that could have waited until the next day. One evening, as we were the last two people in the office, Daniel leaned back in his chair and asked, "Want to continue this discussion over dinner? There's a great Vietnamese place around the corner." The invitation was casual, clearly professional, yet I hesitated. This boundary between work colleague and potential friend was one I rarely crossed. Noticing my hesitation, he added, "No pressure. I just thought food might help us solve this permissions hierarchy issue." I surprised myself by agreeing. That dinner became the first of many. Our conversations expanded beyond work to books, hiking trails, the challenges of urban gardening, his passion, and rock climbing mine. Daniel spoke of his family, Chinese immigrants who had settled in Vancouver, his father's small accounting practice, his mother's community college teaching career, his younger sister's medical studies. His stories were filled with warmth and respect, so different from the dynamics I'd grown up with. I shared carefully edited versions of my own background, mentioning MIT but not my incomplete final semester, describing Boston but not my family. Daniel never pushed for details I wasn't offering. Yet his attentive listening created a space where I gradually wanted to share more. 3 months into the project, Daniel suggested a Saturday hike to celebrate completing a particularly challenging module. The trail he chose offered spectacular views of Mount Rainier, and as we reached the summit viewpoint, something shifted in our interaction. Away from keyboards and conference rooms, surrounded by towering trees and mountain vistas, we were simply two people enjoying each other's company. During our descent, Daniel mentioned a documentary film festival happening the following weekend. Would you be interested in going? Not as colleagues, he clarified, but as a date. The word date triggered an immediate internal panic. I had successfully avoided anything beyond casual coffee meetups since moving to Seattle. The prospect of opening myself to potential hurt again was terrifying. I need to think about it, I replied honestly. Daniel nodded. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. That evening, I called Lauren for the first time in weeks. He asked you out, and you said you'd think about it? She exclaimed. Clara, this is progress. 6 months ago, you would have invented an imaginary pet emergency to avoid answering. But what if it goes wrong? I asked. What if he's not who he seems to be? What if he is exactly who he seems to be? She countered. Look, I get it. Ethan and your family did a number on you. But from everything you've told me, Daniel seems genuinely decent, and you clearly like him enough to be scared of liking him. She was right. After wrestling with my fears for another day, I texted Daniel to accept his invitation. Our first official date revealed another layer of Daniel that deepened my attraction. His intelligence, I already knew, but outside of work, his playful sense of humor emerged. He asked thoughtful questions and remembered small details from our previous conversations. Most importantly, he seemed completely comfortable with himself, lacking the insecurity that often drives people to impress others. As weeks became months, our relationship deepened. Daniel's patience allowed me to set the pace, never rushing intimacy or declarations of feeling. When I finally told him I was falling in love with him 8 months after our first date, his response was both joyful and reassuring. I've been in love with you since our third project meeting, he admitted. When you demolished my security protocol design and then immediately built it back up better than before, I knew then you were someone special. Still, I kept my deepest wounds hidden. Daniel knew I was estranged from my family, but not why. That changed after a year together when he invited me to Vancouver to meet his parents during Lunar New Year celebrations. The Zong family welcomed me with genuine warmth. Watching their interactions, the teasing affection, the arguments that resolved with laughter, the unquestioned support, brought both joy and an ache of comparison I couldn't suppress. After we returned to Seattle, Daniel found me crying in our hotel room. What's wrong? He asked, immediately concerned. Did my family overwhelm you? My mother can be intense, I know. No, I managed through tears. Your family is wonderful. It's just they made me see what I never had. That night, I finally shared the full story. MIT, Ethan, my mother's manipulation, my sister's betrayal, my father's complicity, the shattered life I'd fled, and the new one I'd built from the pieces. Daniel listened without interruption, his expression shifting from shock to anger to deep compassion. When I finished, he took my hands in his. Thank you for trusting me with this. I understand now why trust is so difficult for you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What they did was unforgivable, but I need you to know something. Not everyone will betray you. I won't betray you. You can't promise that, I whispered. I can promise to try every day to be worthy of your trust, he replied. And I can promise that if we ever have conflicts or doubts, I'll bring them directly to you, not to anyone else. His response wasn't a blanket reassurance that my fears were unfounded. Instead, it acknowledged the reality of my experience while offering a different path forward. That honesty meant more than 1,000 promises never to hurt me could have. Our relationship deepened after that night. With my history no longer a shadow between us, I could fully embrace the possibility of a future together. Daniel became not just my partner, but my closest friend, challenging me when I needed challenging and supporting me when I needed support. 2 years into our relationship, during a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands, Daniel proposed. The ring was an emerald rather than a diamond, set in a design he'd helped create. It reminded me of your eyes, he explained. An emerald symbolizes truth and love. Both seem appropriate. Though I'd known this moment might come, I found myself hesitating. Are you sure? My family baggage is considerable. Daniel smiled. I'm not marrying your family. I'm asking to marry you, Clara West, with all your brilliance and strength and carefully protected heart. Will you build a life with me? Yes, I said, the word carrying all the certainty I'd never thought I'd feel again. Yes, I will. We planned a small wedding with just our closest friends. I didn't invite my family, though I sent my father a brief text letting him know I was getting married. His response was typical. Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy. No mention of attending. No questions about Daniel. I hadn't expected otherwise. Our wedding day was perfect in its simplicity. Lauren served as my maid of honor, flying in from Boston with her new fiancé. Daniel's sister Sophie was a bridesmaid, and his college roommate Caleb stood as best man. We exchanged vows in a garden overlooking Puget Sound, surrounded by 40 people who truly cared about us. Today I choose you, Daniel said in his vows, and I'll choose you again tomorrow and every day after that. My own vows acknowledged the journey. You taught me that trust isn't naive, it's the bravest choice we can make. I trust you with my heart, my future, and all the dreams we'll build together. After the wedding, life expanded in unexpected ways. Daniel and I combined our technical expertise to launch a healthcare data security startup. The timing was perfect. Increased regulations around patient data privacy created an immediate market for our solutions. Within 18 months, we'd grown from just the two of us working evenings and weekends to a company of 20 employees with significant venture funding. Success brought visibility I hadn't anticipated. Our company was featured in tech publications and local business journals. I gave interviews about data security and presented at conferences. Though I used my married name professionally, Clara Hayes, it was only a matter of time before my past and present collided. That collision came in the form of a LinkedIn message from Ethan. Congratulations on your success. You always were the brilliant one. We'd love to catch up sometime. I showed the message to Daniel, who raised an eyebrow. What do you want to do? Nothing, I replied. He's not part of my life anymore. I deleted the message without responding, but it triggered thoughts about my family that I'd managed to suppress for years. Through occasional texts with my father, I knew that Ethan and Vanessa's marriage was struggling. His career had never recovered from his startup's failure, and Vanessa had grown resentful of their financial dependence on my parents. My mother, apparently, still controlled the family narrative, positioning me as the ungrateful daughter who had abandoned them. Then came news that changed everything. My father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. His text was characteristically understated. Doctor says 6 to 12 months. Would like to see you before then. After years of maintaining emotional distance, I found myself at a crossroads. The hurt remained, but so did earlier memories. My father teaching me to ride a bike, sneaking me extra dessert when my mother wasn't looking, quietly encouraging my academic interests even when he didn't understand them. I think I need to go, I told Daniel that evening. Then we'll go, he replied simply. Together. The decision to reconnect with my family opened the door to a confrontation years in the making. A confrontation that would finally bring everything full circle in ways I never could have anticipated. After careful consideration, Daniel and I decided that rather than visiting my family home, where my mother would control the environment, we would invite them to Seattle. The distance would give me emotional space and the home field advantage I needed for such a loaded reunion. We'll host them at our place, Daniel suggested. That way, you can set the terms of engagement. Our place was a waterfront property on Mercer Island, purchased after our company's second round of funding. The modern glass and cedar home, with its expansive views of Lake Washington, reflected our success in a way that words couldn't convey. I wasn't above wanting my family to see what I'd built without them. I called my father directly to extend the invitation. His voice, thinner than I remembered, brightened when I suggested the visit. "We could come next month," he said. "Your mother and I. And would it be all right if Vanessa and Ethan came too? They're living with us now, and your mother doesn't want to leave Vanessa alone while we're gone." The request sent ice through my veins. Seeing my parents after 6 years would be challenging enough. Facing Ethan and Vanessa seemed impossible. But I recognized the manipulation. My mother was ensuring I couldn't have time alone with my father. "Everyone is welcome," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. "We have plenty of room." Daniel squeezed my hand in support as I ended the call. "Are you sure about this, including Ethan and Vanessa?" "No," I admitted, "but I need to do this completely. No more shadows hanging over us." The month before their visit passed quickly. Between preparing our home and managing our growing company, I had little time to dwell on anxiety. Daniel arranged for a private chef to handle the first night's dinner, understanding that cooking for the people who had hurt me so deeply would be an unfair burden. The day of their arrival, I stood in our living room, looking out over the water, trying to center myself. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Remember," he said softly, "you're not that vulnerable girl anymore. You're Clara Hayes, co-founder and CTO of Hayes Secure, with 14 patents and a wait list of clients. More importantly, you're a woman who rebuilt her life from scratch. Nothing they say or do can take that away." The doorbell rang precisely at 4 o'clock. My mother had always valued punctuality. I took a deep breath and opened the door. My father stood closest, dramatically thinner than I remembered, his skin bearing the yellowish tint characteristic of his disease. Despite his obvious illness, his eyes lit up at the sight of me. "Clara," he said, his voice catching. Without thinking, I stepped forward to embrace him, his body feeling fragile beneath my arms. My mother stood just behind him, barely aged for my memory. Her critical eyes took me in, then shifted to assess our home, visible through the open door. "You look well," she said, her tone suggesting surprise at this fact. "Thank you for having us." Vanessa and Ethan hung back awkwardly. My sister had gained weight, her once statuesque figure now softer, her carefully maintained blonde hair showing dark roots. Beside her, Ethan looked almost exactly as I remembered, though a new tension lined his face and his once confident posture had diminished. "Please come in," I said, stepping back to allow them entry. "Daniel is looking forward to meeting you all." As they entered our home, I watched their expressions. My mother's practiced neutrality couldn't fully mask her shock at the obvious luxury. Vanessa's eyes widened, darting from the vaulted ceilings to the designer furniture to the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the lake view. Ethan seemed to physically shrink as he took in the success I'd achieved without him. Daniel appeared from his office, the consummate host. Tall, distinguished in casual linen pants and a light blue button-down that complemented his warm complexion. He radiated confidence without arrogance. "Welcome to Seattle," he greeted them, shaking hands with my father, then my mother. When he reached Ethan, there was a brief, charged moment as the two men assessed each other. Daniel's smile never wavered, but I saw Ethan recognize something in my husband's eyes. Knowledge of exactly who Ethan was and what he had done. "We've prepared the guest rooms upstairs," Daniel continued smoothly. "Why don't you all get settled before dinner? Clara can show you the way." As I led my family upstairs, my mother fell into step beside me. "This is quite a home," she remarked. "Your husband must be very successful." "We both are, Mother," I replied evenly. "I co-founded our company with Daniel. We're equal partners in every sense." She absorbed this information with a tight smile. How progressive. I showed them to their rooms, my parents in the main guest suite, Vanessa and Ethan in the smaller room across the hall. As they unpacked, I retreated downstairs to find Daniel opening wine in the kitchen. "They're exactly as you described," he said quietly. "Your mother started assessing the property value within 30 seconds of arrival." I laughed despite my tension. "Just wait until dinner. She'll be counting the silver." The private chef Daniel had arranged prepared an exquisite meal. As we gathered around our dining table, the conversation remained superficial. Seattle weather, their flight, my father's treatment options. Daniel expertly filled awkward silences with questions about Boston and observations about the differences between Canadian and American healthcare systems. It was during dessert that my mother finally broached the subject of our company. "So," she said, setting down her fork with precision, "Clara mentioned you run a business together. What exactly do you do?" Daniel glanced at me, silently offering the chance to answer. I took it. "We founded Hayes Secure 4 years ago," I explained. "We specialize in healthcare data security systems. Our software protects patient information while allowing authorized access across different healthcare providers." "Hayes Secure," my mother repeated. "You took Daniel's name for the company. It tested better with focus groups." I replied smoothly, though the real reason was simpler. I'd wanted nothing of my past associated with my future. "They're being modest," my father interjected. I looked up their company before we came. They were featured in Forbes last year. "Healthcare Security Revolution," the article called it. My mother's eyebrows rose fractionally. "How impressive." Ethan cleared his throat. "What's your market valuation now?" "Our last valuation was just over $300 million, Daniel answered casually. "We're not looking for additional investment currently. We're cash flow positive and growing sustainably." The figure hung in the air. $300 million. Ethan's failed startup had peaked at a $4 million valuation before collapsing. $300 million, Vanessa repeated, looking at Ethan with an expression I couldn't quite read. "That's wow." "Enough about business," my mother interjected briskly. "Clara, will you and Daniel be starting a family soon? You're not getting any younger." "Mom," Vanessa protested weakly. "It's a reasonable question," my mother defended. "They have this enormous house. Seems a shame not to fill it with children." "We're focused on our company right now," Daniel answered diplomatically. "But we haven't ruled out children in the future." My mother turned to me. "You always said you wanted children, Clara. Remember those dolls you used to line up in your room? You had names for all of them." I had no such memory. Vanessa had been the one obsessed with dolls. This subtle rewriting of history was so typical of my mother that I almost laughed. "If Clara and I decide to have children," Daniel said, his voice gentle but firm, "it will be on our timeline, not anyone else's." My mother's smile tightened, unaccustomed to being challenged so politely yet definitively. As the evening progressed, the dynamics became increasingly clear. My mother attempted to reassert control through passive-aggressive comments and selective memories. My father observed quietly, occasionally catching my eye with what seemed like apology. Vanessa fluctuated between feigned interest in our lives and thinly veiled envy. And Ethan grew progressively more uncomfortable, drinking too much wine and barely contributing to the conversation. By the time we moved to the living room for after-dinner drinks, the facade of a pleasant family reunion had worn dangerously thin. "How are things in Boston?" I asked, deliberately vague. A weighted silence followed. My father stared into his whiskey. My mother smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. "We're between opportunities at the moment," Vanessa finally answered. "Ethan's exploring several promising positions." "I see," I replied. "And you're living with Mom and Dad while you explore." "Temporarily," Ethan said quickly. "My non-compete clause from Growth Tech just expired, so I can finally look at other startups in the same space." "It's been 3 years," Vanessa added, an edge to her voice. "A very long temporary arrangement. We're happy to help family through difficult transitions," my mother said pointedly. "That's what families do. They support each other through challenges." The implication hung heavily in the air that I had abandoned my family responsibilities by cutting contact. Daniel, sensing the rising tension, stood. "Would anyone like to see the garden? We've just installed a Japanese-inspired meditation area overlooking the water." My father rose eagerly. "I'd enjoy that." As the others followed Daniel outside, I remained behind to refresh drinks. Ethan lingered awkwardly, handling his empty glass. "Your husband seems like a good man," he said finally. "He is," I replied simply. "You've done incredibly well for yourself, Clara. I always knew you would." I looked at him directly for the first time that evening. "Did you?" "Because I recall you agreeing that I was too focused on my career to be a good partner, that I'd never understand the social aspects of business." He flushed. I was confused. "Your mother can be very persuasive." "Yes, she can be, but we all make our own choices, Ethan." He set down his glass. "I made the wrong one. Surely you know that by now." Before I could respond, my father appeared in the doorway. "Clara, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Ethan nodded awkwardly and slipped past my father toward the garden. My father took a seat on the couch, his movement slow and deliberate. "Your home is beautiful," he said, "but more importantly, you seem happy." "I am," I confirmed. "I owe you an apology," he continued, his voice slow. "Many apologies, actually. I failed you, Clara. I knew what your mother and Vanessa were doing with Ethan, and I did nothing to stop it." The directness of his admission startled me. "Why not?" He sighed heavily. "Cowardice, mainly. I've spent 40 years taking the path of least resistance with your mother. It was easier to let her have her way than to fight battles I didn't think I could win." He looked up, his eyes damp. "But that's no excuse for letting her hurt you, for hurting you myself through inaction." His sincere regret pierced the armor I'd built around my heart. "I needed you to stand up for me, Dad." "I know," he said, "and I'll regret it until my dying day that I didn't." He reached for my hand. "I don't expect forgiveness, Clara. I just wanted you to know that I see clearly now what happened, and I'm deeply sorry for my part in it." From the garden, raised voices drew our attention. Through the windows, I could see my mother and Vanessa in what appeared to be a heated discussion, with Daniel standing calmly between them. "We should join them," my father suggested. "Your mother becomes unpredictable when challenged." In the garden, the scene became clear as we approached. My mother was berating Daniel about something, while Vanessa stood nearby, arms crossed defensively. "Absolutely inappropriate to suggest such a thing," my mother was saying. "Our financial arrangements are private family matters." Daniel noticed our approach and turned. "Ah, Clara, Richard, we were just discussing family dynamics." "He's suggesting we're taking advantage of Dad's finances," Vanessa blurted, "as if we're some kind of parasites." Daniel shook his head. "That's not what I said. I simply observed that multi-generational living can create complex financial interdependencies that sometimes prevent people from making fully independent choices." My mother's face flushed with anger. "You know nothing about our family." "On the contrary," Daniel replied calmly, "I know a great deal about your family. From Clara's perspective, I know about the manipulation, the favoritism, the betrayal. Daniel, I warned softly, though part of me thrilled to hear someone finally confront my mother directly. Betrayal is a strong word, my mother sniffed. Family matters are complicated. Clara has always had a flair for drama and a selective memory. Mom. Vanessa interrupted, surprising everyone. Stop. Just stop. My mother turned to her in shock. Excuse me. He's right. Vanessa continued, her voice shaking. We both know what you did with Ethan. What we did, it was wrong. Ethan, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Your mother told me Clara was seeing someone else at MIT, that she was using me as a backup plan while pursuing a professor she was interested in. I gasped. That's completely untrue. I know that now, he said quietly, but at the time it made sense of why you were so busy, why you seemed distant. Your mother showed me texts from your phone that seemed to confirm it. I never texted anything like that, I said, my mind racing. She must have used my phone, Vanessa finished. She had me text things from your old number that she'd kept in her contacts. Made it look like they were coming from you. My mother's face hardened. This is absurd. I was simply helping two people who are clearly better suited find their way to each other. By lying? My father asked, his voice stronger than I'd heard it all weekend. By manipulating a young man's feelings and betraying our daughter? I did what was necessary, my mother insisted. Vanessa needed stability that Clara didn't. Clara was always going to be fine on her own. So you decided to sacrifice my happiness for Vanessa's? I asked, the hurt still fresh despite the years. I made a practical decision, my mother replied unapologetically. Vanessa's looks were her only real asset. She needed to capitalize on them before they faded. You had your education, your career potential. Mom. Vanessa exclaimed, clearly wounded. Is that really how you see me? As nothing but a pretty face with an expiration date? My mother waved dismissively. Don't be so sensitive. I'm simply being practical. I did what any mother would do. Ensured both my daughter's futures as best I could. No, my father countered, surprising us all with his firmness. You did what served your vision of how things should be. You didn't consider what either of your daughters actually wanted or needed.